Great talent wins games. Great stories win hearts. April 14, 1999, Villa Park. 10 Man United are hanging on when a blur of red shreds the night. Ryan Giggs dribbles past 4 defenders and rips the net, a goal that will live as long as the FA Cup itself. But how does the symbol of Old Trafford's glory become a lightning rod for controversy off it? How do you define greatness? By the medals on your shelf or by the scars on your soul? Ryan Giggs spent more than 2 decades at Manchester United, lifting 13 Premier League titles, 2 Champions League trophies, and setting the record for most appearances in the club's history. To generations of fans, he was the living embodiment of loyalty, a one-club man who danced down the left wing with grace and fury. And yet, the same man who symbolized discipline on the pitch would later be engulfed by personal scandals, so explosive that they shook the foundations of his legacy. This is the paradox of Ryan Giggs, a footballer whose career defines an era, but whose personal life reminds us that heroes are human, fragile, and flawed. So tonight we will retrace the steps of the boy from Cardiff who became Old Trafford's eternal number 11. From breathtaking goals to broken bonds, from triumph to disgrace, this is the untold story of Ryan Giggs, the legend who gave everything to football but lost control of his own story. Ryan Giggs' life is a clash between 2 worlds. On one side, the glory, a career that spanned over 20 years, unmatched consistency, and trophies that rewrote English football history. On the other, the downfall, headlines of betrayal, fractured family ties, and a reputation dragged into courtrooms instead of stadiums. The stakes could not be higher. For Manchester United, Giggs is still the beating heart of their golden era. For the football world, he is a reminder that greatness on the pitch can be eclipsed by shadows off it. The question is, when history remembers Ryan Giggs, will it remember the wizard of Old Trafford or the man whose private life destroyed his myth?
Ryan Joseph Giggs was born in Cardiff, Wales in 1973 into a family already steeped in sport. His father, Danny Wilson, was a professional rugby league player known for his explosive pace and athletic build. From the very beginning, young Ryan was surrounded by the rhythms of competition, discipline, and expectation, yet his upbringing was far from simple. When he was still a child, his parents' relationship fractured, and his mother Lynn took Ryan and his younger brother to Manchester. That move, though painful, would change the course of football history. In the streets of Swinton, on the edges of Manchester, Ryan found solace and freedom in football. He was the boy who never stopped running, the kid who turned every pavement into a pitch and every wall into a goal. Teachers and local coaches recall his almost unnatural balance, his ability to glide past others with the ball glued to his feet. Unlike most children, Giggs had both the stamina and the vision, traits rare at such a young age. At just 10 years old, his talents had already begun attracting attention. By the time he reached high school, local scouts were buzzing about the quiet Welsh lad who could change games on his own. In 1987, his life took another fateful twist. One of Manchester United's greatest figures, Sir Alex Ferguson, had heard whispers of this wiry teenager and personally visited his home to convince him to join United's youth academy. Ferguson later admitted that Giggs' raw ability reminded him of a young George Best, a once-in-a-generation talent. But what truly set Ryan apart wasn't just flair. It was the relentless hunger, the refusal to be ordinary. While many boys his age dreamed of playing for United, Giggs lived as though it was inevitable. The early instability of his family life had given him resilience, and the game gave him identity. By the time he signed schoolboy terms with United, it was clear this wasn't just another academy kid. This was the beginning of a story that would define a club, a league, and a generation.
Ryan Giggs' professional journey began in the most dramatic way possible. Thrust into the spotlight as a teenager in the early 1990s, just as Manchester United were preparing to rise again under Sir Alex Ferguson. In 1991, at only 17 years old, he made his league debut against Everton, and within a year, he was already becoming a fixture in United's first team. With his dazzling runs down the left wing, fearless dribbling, and ability to ghost past defenders, Giggs offered fans a glimpse of the future, a future defined by pace, daring, and artistry. That period also coincided with the emergence of a golden generation that would later be known as the Class of '92. Alongside Paul Scholes, David Beckham, Gary and Phil Neville, and Nicky Butt, Giggs was seen as the torchbearer, the one who embodied both the swagger and the promise of United's youth. The press labeled him the Welsh Wizard, while comparisons to George Best began surfacing almost immediately. Those comparisons carried weight. Best had defined the 1960s with his blend of skill and glamour, and now, 3 decades later, Ferguson believed Giggs could ignite a new dynasty. But Giggs's rise wasn't just about talent, it was about mentality. Ferguson often spoke about his discipline in training, his willingness to adapt, and his sheer love for the game. Teammates marveled at how he seemed unfazed by pressure. Whether it was his first Manchester derby, where he scored the winning goal against City, or stepping onto European nights under the floodlights, Giggs looked like he belonged from the very start. The early 1990s were also a turbulent time for English football. The Premier League had just been formed in 1992, bringing more television money and global exposure. Giggs became one of the poster boys for this new era. His poster adorned countless teenagers' bedroom walls, his style and haircut copied across Britain. Unlike many prodigies who buckle under media pressure, Giggs thrived in it, letting the noise fuel his performances. By the time he won the PFA Young Player of the Year award in both 1992 and 1993, an achievement matched by few, he had cemented his place as one of the brightest talents in Europe. For Ferguson, Giggs wasn't just a starlet, he was a symbol of what Manchester United could become. And for the fans, every time Giggs picked up the ball on the left touchline, anticipation rippled through the crowd. Something was always about to happen. This was no longer the boy from Cardiff. This was a young man carrying the weight of expectations, and yet, somehow he made it look effortless. The stage was set for the moment that would elevate him from prodigy to legend. Every great career has a defining moment, the instant when potential becomes immortality. For Ryan Giggs, that moment came on the night of April 14, 1999, in an FA Cup semi-final replay against Arsenal at Villa Park. It was a match teetering on a knife's edge, United reduced to 10 men after Roy Keane's dismissal, Arsenal pressing for victory, the treble dream slipping away. Then, from deep inside his own half, Giggs seized the ball, eyes blazing with defiance. What followed was a blur of red and black, a run etched permanently into football's collective memory. He sprinted down the right flank, unusual for a left winger, slaloming past Patrick Vieira, Lee Dixon, Martin Keown, and Tony Adams, each defender left twisted in despair. Entering the box, he unleashed a thunderous strike high past David Seaman. Shirt off, chest bare, he sprinted toward the ecstatic United fans, a primal roar ripping through the night. That goal wasn't just a winner, it was a statement. It carried United into the final and symbolized the audacity of a team destined for greatness. For Giggs, it crystallized everything that defined him. Fearless dribbling, raw speed, and the ability to deliver in the most pressurized of moments. The media exploded with superlatives the next morning. A goal for the ages, wrote one paper. Ferguson simply called it a miracle. To this day, pundits debate whether it was the greatest FA Cup goal ever scored. But the breakthrough wasn't confined to one night. By 1999, Giggs had already been central to United's domestic dominance throughout the decade. He was no longer just the promising youngster, he was a cornerstone of a machine that conquered England year after year. Yet this particular goal carried symbolic weight. It announced him not just as United's prodigy, but as a global superstar. Fans who had never watched English football before suddenly knew his name. That season, of course, ended with United's historic treble: Premier League, FA Cup, and Champions League. Giggs played 51 games in all competitions, his influence stretching far beyond goals and assists.
His relentless runs forced defenses to adjust, creating space for teammates like Dwight York, Andy Cole, and Paul Scholes. While others scored the crucial goals in the Champions League final against Bayern Munich, it was Giggs' earlier brilliance that kept the trouble alive in the FA Cup. This was his first taste of truly global acclaim, and though he had won trophies before, the breakthrough of 1999 elevated him into a different realm. No longer just a young star, he became a talisman of Ferguson's empire. He was proof that United's philosophy of youth, pace, and daring could dominate the world stage. For Giggs, the breakthrough came with a subtle but important change too. He was maturing, becoming more than just a winger who ran at defenders. His vision and passing range began to develop, laying the foundation for his transformation later in his career. But at this stage, the world knew him as the lightning bolt on United's left flank, the man who could turn a game in a single stride. The breakthrough had been made. Giggs was no longer chasing legends. He was becoming one. And the years ahead would show whether he could sustain greatness in a league that devours its heroes as quickly as it creates them.
By the dawn of the 2000s, Ryan Giggs had already become a household name. But what set him apart from other prodigies was not just his early brilliance, it was his longevity, his ability to adapt, and his consistency across 2 decades in the most physically demanding league in the world. Where others faded, Giggs evolved, cementing himself as a central pillar of Manchester United's golden era. Between 1992 and 2013, he won an astonishing 13 Premier League titles, more than any player in history. Add to that 4 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, 2 Champions League crowns, and countless community shields, and Giggs' medal collection became almost surreal. He was not just part of United's dominance, he was its embodiment. His playing style defined the team's philosophy: fearless, fast, direct, and relentlessly attacking. In the early 2000s, Giggs' trademark was still his devastating pace and dribbling. Fullbacks dreaded seeing him receive the ball because they knew what was coming: a shimmy, a burst of acceleration, and often humiliation. Matches against Arsenal, Chelsea, and Liverpool became his proving grounds, and time after time he tormented defenders with an elegance that seemed effortless. Thierry Henry once admitted that when Arsenal prepared for United, Giggs was among the top threats they discussed in every meeting. But what truly elevated him was his ability to reinvent himself. As he entered his 30s, his legs no longer carried the same raw speed. Many expected his decline. Instead, Giggs adapted. He transitioned into a more central, playmaking role, where his intelligence, vision, and passing dictated the rhythm of games. This transformation extended his career by nearly a decade, allowing him to compete effectively against younger, fresher players. It was in this period that Giggs showcased not just talent, but wisdom, the hallmark of greatness. One of his finest late career moments came in the 2007-2008 Champions League season. Though no longer the explosive winger of old, he remained crucial. When United lifted the Champions League trophy in Moscow after defeating Chelsea on penalties, Giggs broke Sir Bobby Charlton's long-standing record for most appearances. That night, Ferguson called him the ultimate United player, a man who had given everything, every year, without compromise. Behind the scenes, Giggs was also revered for his professionalism. Teammates often spoke of his discipline, yoga sessions, meticulous fitness regimes, and a diet that allowed him to stay competitive at an age when most had retired. Cristiano Ronaldo, who would go on to become one of football's greatest, credited Giggs for showing him how to train, how to prepare, and how to think like a winner. For the younger generation, Giggs was both mentor and role model, proof that success required more than talent. It required dedication. His impact stretched beyond statistics, but the numbers themselves are staggering. Over 960 appearances for Manchester United, more than 160 goals, and assists too numerous to count in an era before they were meticulously tracked. More importantly, he scored in 23 consecutive Premier League seasons, a record that speaks not only to skill, but to unmatched endurance. The fans adored him. To them, Giggs was more than a footballer. He was tradition,
loyalty, and continuity in a game constantly changing. While big names came and went at Old Trafford, Giggs remained. His shirt number 11 became iconic, a symbol of the Ferguson dynasty. Visiting teams feared it. Home fans cherished it. Yet, as we revel in his peak years, the story of Ryan Giggs also comes with a twist. Because while his career on the pitch was flawless, his personal life was beginning to fracture behind closed doors. The very image of loyalty and professionalism would later be tested by scandals that no one could have imagined from the quiet, disciplined winger they idolized. Ryan Giggs had conquered football. He had nothing left to prove on the pitch, but off the pitch, the battles he would face would be darker, more personal, and far more destructive than any defender he had ever dribbled past. For nearly 2 decades, Ryan Giggs' reputation had been untouchable. He was the shining constant at Manchester United, the player who symbolized loyalty in an age of transfers and betrayals. But in the twilight of his career, and even more so after retirement, that carefully built image began to unravel. On the pitch, Giggs' body inevitably slowed. By the early 2010s, though still capable of brilliance, he was no longer the flying winger who terrified defenders. Instead, he became a wise playmaker, orchestrating play from deeper positions. His adaptability earned him respect, and Ferguson often trusted him in crucial matches. Yet for every cheer at Old Trafford, whispers outside the stadium were growing louder. The first cracks in his image came with reports of affairs. In 2011, the British press uncovered Giggs' extramarital relationship with model Imogen Thomas. What followed was a media circus, court injunctions, failed attempts to hide his identity, and an avalanche of headlines that transformed him overnight from national hero to tabloid scandal. As shocking as that revelation was, an even more devastating story soon surfaced: a long-term affair with his brother Rodri's wife, Natasha. The betrayal tore apart his family, shattered relationships, and left fans struggling to reconcile the man they adored on the pitch with the one portrayed in the press. For a football culture that had always celebrated Giggs as the ultimate professional, the revelations hit like a thunderbolt. Commentators ask whether his legacy was now irreparably stained. Teammates and managers kept largely silent, but the damage was done. The private life of Ryan Giggs had become front-page news, eclipsing his achievements in football. Yet even amidst scandal, his football journey had one last dramatic twist. In 2014, after David Moyes was sacked as Manchester United manager, Giggs stepped in as interim player manager. For 4 games, he straddled 2 worlds, still lacing up his boots, but also standing on the touchline in a suit, directing the very club he had served since boyhood. It was a symbolic passing of the torch, a glimpse of what could have been if his post-playing career had followed a smoother path. But his managerial future too became clouded by controversy. After retiring, Giggs took charge of the Welsh national team in 2018, hoping to translate his on-field wisdom into coaching success. Yet his tenure was soon overshadowed by legal battles and allegations of assault, charges he has consistently denied, but which further complicated his legacy. For fans, reconciling these 2 Giggses, the wizard at Old Trafford and the man in court, has been painful. Some choose to separate the art from the artist, remembering only the goals, the dribbles, the trophies. Others argue that legacy cannot be split so easily, that personal conduct inevitably bleeds into how history remembers greatness. In the end, Giggs' resets remind us that heroes are human, and that the line between triumph and tragedy can be razor thin. His story is not just about the glory of football, but also about the fragility of reputation. Ryan Giggs' legacy is as complex as it is extraordinary. On the field, he remains one of the most decorated players in football history. 34 major trophies with Manchester United, over 960 appearances, and the unique distinction of scoring in 23 consecutive Premier League seasons. His name is etched alongside legends like George Best, Sir Bobby Charlton, and Paul Scholes. For United fans, he was the heartbeat of an era, the ever-present figure who carried the club from the dawn of the Premier League to its global dominance. But legacy is never written in medals alone. For all the brilliance he showed in red, Giggs' personal life cast a shadow that refuses to fade.
His scandals fractured the image of loyalty he embodied, leaving many to wonder, can greatness on the pitch survive disgrace off it? To some, his genius as a footballer remains untouched. To others, his off-field actions forever taint his name. Perhaps this is the final truth of Ryan Giggs, that his story is not one of pure triumph or pure tragedy, but of both. He is a reminder that legends can inspire us with their gifts while also warning us of their flaws. In the end, Giggs will always be remembered. The only question is how each of us chooses to remember him.
Great talent wins games. Great stories win hearts. Ryan Giggs' journey shows us both sides of that truth. The triumphs that defined an era and the flaws that reminded us of his humanity. Thank you for watching the untold story of Ryan Giggs. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next Legend's Tale. In our upcoming video, we'll uncover the untold story of another Premier League icon, one whose rise and fall is every bit as dramatic. Stay tuned.